Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is the ninth film from writer and director Quentin Tarantino, and this one stars Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt as Rick Dalton and Cliff Booth. DiCaprio plays Rick Dalton. He's an actor in the golden age of Hollywood. His career is kind of coming down to a close. He feels like he's washed up, but then his stuntman, Cliff Booth, played by Brad Pitt, encourages him to take on some other projects and gives him the inspiration that he needs to continue on with his career, while we have some stuff with Sharon Tate, played by Margot Robbie, going on in the background, and Cliff is off on his own other adventure too. Now, you know that when a Tarantino movie comes out, you have to set aside some time and make it an event, because Tarantino makes these things really long. The Hateful Eight was 2 hours and 48 minutes, Django Unchained 2 hours 45. This is 2 hours and 41. And we all know how Tarantino films go down, that they're very stylized, they're very violent, they're very over the top. This movie is much more grounded, and I give Tarantino a lot of credit for that. He really crafted a comedy slash drama here with elements of violence. This is probably his least violent film, next to probably Jackie Brown. Honestly, I have not seen all of Jackie Brown. I just can't get into Jackie Brown. So, I mean, when I rank all the Tarantino films, at the end of this review, that's going to be on the very bottom. But I freaking loved Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. There are a few issues I have with the movie, and I'll say what those issues are. But man, Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio, holy shit, man, these are great performances. I don't think DiCaprio reaches the heights of his performance in Django Unchained, which I think he should have been nominated and won for an Oscar. Nothing's ever going to beat Calvin Candy, but man, DiCaprio is really good. I love that scene too, where it shows him acting in a movie and then he's just back in his trailer. He's like, God damn it, you will embarrass yourself in front of all those people! Like that scene from the trailer, I loved that entire segment of the movie, despite the middle of the movie feeling a bit bloated. I'll get into that in a minute. I loved everything with Leonardo DiCaprio. I loved all the behind-the-scenes stuff of how to make a movie in Hollywood. I loved revisiting the golden age of Hollywood when, you know, actors and directors actually had contracts with studios and they couldn't break those contracts. Stuff like that. It's so interesting to see a washed-up Hollywood actor in the twilight of his career get back on his feet like Leonardo DiCaprio's character did in this. Brad Pitt in this movie is so goddamn awesome. He's so zany, and he's kind of, you think he's kind of cuckoo, but Brad Pitt just sells it. That's the thing. You have two great actors here, and not going to take anything away from Margot Robbie, because when she's in the movie, she's great as well as Sharon Tate. She steals every scene she's in, but Brad Pitt steals every scene he's in, just like how Leonardo DiCaprio steals every scene he's in. That's how I felt with Tarantino movies like Django Unchained and Pulp Fiction. Everybody is a scene stealer in this movie. I loved the characters. I loved that these two, Rick Dalton and Cliff Booth, have this dynamic friendship that's never going to be broken. I love that we learn a little bit about Rick Dalton's acting career. I love that we learn a little bit about Cliff Booth's kind of shady past, and it hints at it, but the fact that, like, there's something that happens and he was never punished, I'll say, I'm not going to get into spoilers, just makes it all that much more pleasing and be like, you know what? These are the two guys I want as my friends when I'm old. Tarantino directs the shit out of this movie. I've always loved Tarantino's style. I love his use of music and the soundtrack. It really captured the 1960s era of Hollywood in the golden age. He really seemed to have done his research, and when he was writing and directing this thing, he had a vision. His vision is on screen. It wasn't to create the Charles Manson murders again. I mean, those happen in the background, but his whole goal with this movie was to show you the in and outs of the movie business, whether it's now or 1969 or even early on. He wanted to show you what it was like to be a filmmaker, and I love that aspect of this movie. And I think he did a really great job directing it. He captures this film aesthetic, I'm going to say, filmmaking aesthetic, and I love that he shows you the in and outs of the filmmaking process, the behind the scenes of the production and all of that. All these grand things that we have come to know in movies are shown in this movie. And like how Rick Dalton and Cliff Booth sit down and just kind of watch their movies. You know, they they kind of talk over them when you see scenes from like the movies. I mean, they're fake movies, but that was a really interesting dynamic. That was a really wise directing choice, I think, by Tarantino, and it was something that made the movie unique to me, and one of Tarantino's better movies, actually. There are a couple issues I do have with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and that is, as I mentioned before, the middle of the movie, despite loving that, because we get to see DiCaprio unhinged, and we get to see his character, Rick Dalton, try and revive his career. The middle does feel a bit bloated. It feels really long in the middle because it's the both of them doing their own things, but at that point of the movie, it's one thing that they're both doing. And Brad Pitt's character is kind of just gone for a good 20 to 25 minutes, so it makes everything with Leonardo DiCaprio feel a little bit longer, played out. This is the part of the movie where you can really feel that 2 hour and 41 minute runtime. It's definitely a slow burn. I'll say that. I think that this is the chunk of the movie where I'm like, this is where it feels really long. The movie captured my attention. I mean, with a movie like this, you gotta capture my attention. If it's that long, you have to capture my attention right off the bat, and it did. The first act did that, the third act did that, the second act still had my attention, but I was kind of like, let's get back to what we were doing in the first act and the third act. Because those two acts are great. The second act is still great too, but I feel like the runtime could have been trimmed a little bit in that second act. And maybe make the movie feel a little less bloated. It seems like we're watching a couple of different movies happen here. And this is where, because we have everything with Rick Dalton, we have everything with Cliff Booth, we have everything with Sharon Tate. I just think there was just a bit too much there in the middle to really keep my attention as much as the first and the third acts of the movie did. It still had my attention, not as well as the first and third acts. I'm going to talk about the fact that this wasn't really a problem of mine because this was something I really loved, but it's an issue that I think has to be addressed, and you can really look at this movie and say it doesn't have a plot, because it really kind of doesn't. It's just really going through the motions of a Hollywood actor, showing you what one has to do to revive their career. I guess you could say that that's the plot, that a washed-up actor is trying to revive his career. But then you have all this other stuff in the background, like the whole Manson cult and everything with Cliff Booth, and it just, again, I said it before, it feels like it's 3 different movies, and everything that builds up to the finale doesn't really feel earned, because the whole entire movie just doesn't really know where it wants to go. I think that could be a problem for a lot of people. That's not really a problem of mine. I like the fact that this movie is kind of a no-plot movie, but I can see where that's going to bother a lot of people, especially with a huge runtime like this. Also, Margot Robbie, did we really need Sharon Tate in the movie? Because she doesn't really do anything. She just stands there, looks pretty because she's Margot Robbie, and it's just like, yeah, I'm in the movie. I pop up every once in a while. Those are really my big issues with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but other than that, I dug this movie. This is one of my favorite Tarantino movies. And I'm going to give Once Upon a Time in Hollywood an A-. And right now, I'm going to rank the Tarantino movies. Number 1, Django Unchained. Number 2, Pulp Fiction. You're already going to hate me, aren't you? I put Django above Pulp Fiction because Django actually feels shorter than 2 hours and 45 minutes because he doesn't break it up into chapters. When Tarantino breaks his movies up into chapters, I feel like that's where they feel really long. Like The Hateful Eight feels 2 hours and 48 minutes. Django Unchained feels like it's 2 hours and 20 minutes, but the movie itself is actually 2 hours and 45. So, number 1, Django Unchained. Number 2, Pulp Fiction. Number 3, Reservoir Dogs. Number 4, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Number 5, Inglourious Bastards. Number 6, The Hateful Eight. Number 7, Kill Bill Volumes 1 and 2 counts as one movie. Number 8, Death Proof. And number 9, Jackie Brown, despite the fact I haven't seen the whole thing. I just can never get into Jackie Brown. That's my review for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I'm curious as to what you guys are going to think about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. This is definitely one of Tarantino's better films, if you ask me. I think it's in his top tier. I mean, I put it at number 4, for Christ's sake. It's better than The Hateful Eight. I think it's a tad better than Inglourious Bastards. I think this has more of a flow to it than Inglourious Bastards. But I'm curious to see what you guys thought of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, because there's a couple of my friends who are just like, I was pretty bored by that, or, it was okay. And it's getting all this critical acclaim, So what did you guys think of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood? Drop me some feedback in the comments section below. I will leave all my links to my social media accounts in the description below. You guys are the best. Thank you for watching. My name is Alex Madden, and I'll see you at the movies somewhere.